Hello, and welcome to our first of four gallery talks for the BFA senior thesis exhibitions. My name is Courtney Kessel. I am the instructor for this course, and I'm happy to introduce our students tonight. We're going to be in Ohio University Art Gallery first for Invisible Strings, featuring artists in the BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Studio Art. Tonight we will hear from Jailei Mass, Emily Van Meter, Sophia Hoersten, Michael Trimboli, Sarah Heink, and Jenna Tucker, and Sam Butts. With that, tomorrow night, join us in the Ohio University Art Gallery for their reception from 5 to 7, followed by the reception in Trimboli Gallery from 6 to 8 p.m. Also tonight, we will be going to Trimboli Gallery after this talk at 5 p.m. So stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our artists to have some to deliver their gallery talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. For our first artist, we are going to go to Jailei Mass.
Hi, as I was introduced, my name is Jailei Moss. I am a dual major in the Honors Tutorial College for Art History and Studio Art, and I am a painting and drawing BFA. So this is my series titled A Blue Existence. I'll read you a little bit of the artist statement just to start us off. My thesis project, titled A Blue Existence, is a reckoning with memory in the context of relationships, locational identity, and femininity. This work was manifested in a series of mixed media oil paintings, which utilized film photography, indigo dye, found textiles, CDs, and other materials as a reverence to the human action of collecting ephemera that remind us of moments in our individual histories. So this work really seeks to use a multiplicity of materials in order to embody my version of the human experience, in order to reckon with memory and how memory of place, person, relationships becomes part of your identity. So as you can see, I utilize a lot of arbitrary color, which basically means to utilize alternate colors compared to reality in order to evoke a certain emotion for viewers. And my color of choice is the color blue. I feel a lot of identity with the color, and I felt as a painter I was able to really get the drama and contrast with my paints that I wanted with this color over the course of this series. So each of these paintings features different parts of the body, primarily my body, but also features old photographs, whether in painted form or actually stuck on or transferred onto the piece of different people throughout my life or myself as a child. And through all of this kind of fragmentation of material, to talk about place, thing, person, I'm really interested in this balance between intimacy with myself and my life as the artist, but also how the viewer can step into my work in certain instances and see themselves. So this really is a celebration of kind of the dissonance we feel when remembering things throughout our history, but also a celebration of such ideas. And I really hope that viewers can come to my work and celebrate their own personal history. So throughout the series, there are some moments that are very specific to me, but also some moments of habitual action. This one primarily is my largest example of that, in that most people in the West celebrate a birthday, not to generalize, and oftentimes there is a cake involved, maybe friends, candles, different things like that. And so with this piece, I was really interested in viewers coming to the work and thinking about how we remember birthdays. There are images of my first and second birthdays, as well as this is an image of my 21st, to be surrounded by friends. And I'm definitely interested in the politics of relationships, both with one's own body, myself as a woman, and the politics of relationships just in how we exist in space together. So throughout this work, I was really inspired to create an alternative kind of space, which would reflect kind of my mental state, how I remember things, the way that my brain categorizes its memory. So yeah, the series was really, really fun to create. It was really interesting as kind of a point of catharsis to sort of like let go of different moments in my past or to reinterpret them in different instances, as you can see with a lot of these moments with different ephemera kind of hodgepodge together. So both an aesthetic choice, but also kind of a letting go for myself. And I hope a letting go for others, for their own personal chronology. So, yeah, that's all.
Next up, we are going to go see Emily Van Meters work. This is artist Emily Van Meter.
Hello all, thank you so much for tuning in today, and welcome into my intimate space that I've created here in the gallery. I am a dual major in studio art and art history. The research aspect of this practice is really rooted in art history. Over the past 2 years, I have formulated, developed, and implemented a new methodology of conducting contemporary art history. This methodology is based in feminist art history, oral history. I was highly influenced by the different types of art history that I studied here at Ohio University. The process, the methodology included 3 interviews with women artists based in Chicago, Illinois. My first 2 interviews that I conducted with these 7 artists took place over Teams, and they lasted between 30 and 45 minutes. I then had the opportunity to travel to Chicago last summer to meet them all in person. These face-to-face interactions were extremely genuine. I chose not to record these interactions to remain in a genuine space and one that was free of pressures. These interactions, the studio visits, the interviews lasted for roughly an hour to 3 hours. For some of them, they took me to their homes as well as their studios. I ate meals with some of them. I stayed in one of their homes while I was in Chicago. I really formed these intimate bonds with them, all in the hopes of being able to write about them not only within the current art historical canon, which is primarily male, but allowing them to talk about the context of their work being put within their own words. That translated into my studio practice with doing these large-scale paintings, which are here behind me. I did a large portrait painting of each of the 7 artists. These stand at 5 feet tall and are 4 feet wide. During the final interview, I asked each woman what color they felt best represented themselves. I did this because this project, these paintings, are not about photorealism. Though I do believe that is a great thing to aspire to, I wanted these pieces to feel like the artists who are in them. By asking them what color they felt best represented themselves, they really pondered on that and came back with an answer like blue, pink, and orange. I then used that color to pick the duck cotton, which is stretched over the stretchers that I made and are the bases of these pieces. And I used it as one of the primary colors within the pieces themselves. The secondary color that's used within these pieces I chose that I felt best represented them. I wanted to balance the dichotomy of how we are perceived and how we perceive ourselves. I wanted both of those things to be present within these pieces. In order to keep these pieces feeling genuine, I utilized an intuitive art making practice. So each of these pieces I only spent 5 hours on. It was a continuous work session. And within that work session, I would listen to the interviews that I conducted with these women in order to keep me in the space with them and continue to imbue their personality into these pieces. This 5-hour time limit was at first restricting, but then became very freeing, allowing for this looseness, and the decision-making couldn't be overthought. I ended this project with a self-portrait, which is featured here at the end of this smaller exhibition. Though I wanted this project to be about the women who participated in it, I also wanted to represent the profound impact that it had on me, not only as an artist, but an art historian. Before conducting these interviews, I really wasn't aware of what it meant to be an artist outside of academia. Speaking to these women and seeing how they formulated their practice, either a couple years out of undergrad or 40 years out of undergrad, really allowed me to get a better understanding of who I was. So in order to create these paintings, I purchased 6 foot by 6 foot pieces of duck cotton. Therefore, there were a number of cutoffs from those pieces. I then hand sewed them together to create this large 3 foot by 3 foot piece of fabric. I then stretched that over a stretcher bar and gessoed it to do a self-portrait. I chose to do only one color. I consulted with myself, but also my friends on what color they felt best represented me and I felt best represented me, and we landed on green. I chose to constrict the color and to constrict the amount of gesso and to constrict the size to reflect that I still feel I have a lot of growing, and the women who were included in this project are people who I can only aspire to be one day. Thank you so much for listening to this talk, and if you're interested in hearing the interviews, they are posted on my podcast called Let's Look, where you can listen to the entirety of the interviews that I did with these artists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. Up next is our artist, Sophia.
Hello, my name is Sophia Hoersten, and I'm a senior in the Bachelor of Fine Arts major with a concentration in painting and drawing. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my thesis collection. It's this trio of oil paintings to my right. I titled it Here Today, Reflections on Existentialism through a Series of Self-Portraiture. And with this series, I was concerned with exploring psychological complexities of existential thought and emotion, which permeate everyday moments and settings. I was specifically wanting to use myself as a subject within these portraits because I felt that it offered me a chance to both reflect and ponder some of my own experiences dealing with these themes. I also wanted to offer my viewers an opportunity to put themselves within my shoes as they may experience some of these similar themes within their own lives and give them a chance to reflect alongside me or as a reflection of myself. With this series, I was interested in kind of breaking out the limitations that realism can sometimes impose on an artist. I was very interested in leaning into a contemporary approach which allowed me to explore lighting and value in a different way. As you can see within these portraits, I sort of leaned into color relationships, specifically between warm and cool color, and I experimented with value and adjusting contrast. I didn't want to limit myself by copying, essentially, the reference image that I used. I did pledge a certain level of loyalty to the reference image, but I was mostly concerned with capturing atmospheres and subliminal moods within my work because I felt that it communicated the theme a little bit more thoroughly and potently. One thing that I would say characterizes this body of work specifically is the inspiration that I derived from interior spaces, specifically the domestic settings captured within these pieces. I myself am very much a homebody. I derive a lot of my energy and comfort from within the home, whether it be from a bedroom space or a living space. And I found a very similar sense of comfort as I was rendering these paintings because I found this similar sense of comfort in the rhythmic process of painting lines. You'll see that that's a similar theme across all of these paintings. I used elements such as window frames and the parallel lines of a mirror or a table or counter as an opportunity to sort of set my composition and guide my composition as well as my viewers' eyes throughout each piece. I also thought that, including some of these more rigid structures in juxtaposition to the more organic renderings of the figure would offer sort of an expression of feeling both in and out of control of life's direction in the identity forming years, which sort of ties my style in with my theme. Let's see. Yeah, I think I was going into this this completion of this project, I wanted to give myself a certain level of freedom from the typical style that I work in. I work in a very tight style. You'll notice the very clean, precise lines throughout each of my pieces. But with this style, I really wanted to set an intention at the beginning of the collection to both render things fully, but also give myself the freedom to sort of take creative liberties with this collection by adjusting lighting, again, as I mentioned, and value. So I now want to have you go behind the screen a little bit and see some of the processed images that I included. So these processed images I wanted to talk a little bit about because I think that they give some insight to the themes of my work. My process is very important to my art practice because I start in a very gestural manner and I work towards the finished product, which becomes much tighter in style. And I think this also lends itself a bit to my theme, but you'll see that with the first image, I have only one layer put down, but I was very occupied with capturing the true value of the piece, which would remain for the entirety of the process to the end result. I was also very interested in capturing shapes and true form within my first layer. From there, I began applying the oil layers because that first layer was just acrylic, and I start going in with smaller brushes and capturing the essence and moods that I'm trying to portray within my piece. And from there, I just begin working with smaller brushes and adding glazes, which allow me to capture some of the nuance and color, which you'll see within the skin tones of my piece and a little bit throughout the rest of my piece. But kind of going back to that, taking time to render the organic elements of my work in juxtaposition to some of those straighter, more structured elements. That's sort of the place where I add some of that nuance, and I really just have fun with it. So thank you for coming to my artist talk.
Thank you, Sophia. Up next is Mikey.
Hi, thanks for coming. So this is my exhibition, The Road Home. So for this exhibition, I wanted to talk about the dichotomy of growing up in Appalachia, specifically growing up queer in Appalachia. I feel that growing up, people both in and out of Appalachia had two very strict views of the region. One being it is this wonderful old-timey place that has very strong traditional American values, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the other being that it is a place full of a lot of suffering, a lot of poverty, and that's it. The reality of that is, growing up there, neither of those two things are fully true. So, for my exhibition, I chose to depict my ideas through the use of quilts, as well as woodcuts and the use of tarot reading. This first quilting has a very long history in Appalachia out of necessity. So I did want to include that imagery here. But on my quilts, I chose to use old family photographs. All of these photos were taken when I was between the ages of 8 and a couple months old, and a few were taken a few years before to capture some family members who passed before I was born. The quilt that goes along with it over here depicts current photos of the same people, or where I couldn't take photos of the same people, a blank space where their memory is left, but they're no longer with us. These two quilts represent the past and the present. The past and present being a very big topic in tarot reading as well. So on the interior of the space that I've created, the death card is quilted into both quilts. This one in reverse, meaning upside down, and the other one upright, how you would traditionally see it, reverse and upright. Tarot reading, the positioning of the card is incredibly important. In reverse, you tend to get the opposite meaning. The death card means the end of a cycle, not necessarily directly death, but the ending of something that in some way should be grieved. In reverse, it means that you are unable to break these cycles, that you are stuck in a loop of an unhealthy and unproductive way of life. For me personally, I believe that that's where Appalachia is, stuck in a constant cycle that we struggle to get out of. So the first quilt represents that and represents my past, growing up there, and my family's past. And the present quilt represents breaking those cycles and moving forward. Appalachia will always be home, but there are always ways that we can get better. For my woodcuts, the reaction depicts a person out of view holding a shotgun out the door, ready to shoot a series of birds on a power line. Something that can come off as unnecessary, cruel, and very strange to people from outside the region. Here in the compassion, it is shown burying the bird, to show that even in these moments that we see in Appalachia of cruelty and suffering for no apparent reason, there is still always compassion, and that's not something we are allowed to forget. The images on my quotes also depict this. I have family and friends, and family is used loosely here. Family is not always blood. Family is the people who take care of you. In my past quote, these are all of the people who got me to where I am today and made home feel like home. There's a lot of nostalgia to that quilt and a lot of longing for something that is no longer there and will never be back. All of the photos are mirrored on these. That can be. They depict the same people and the same places when possible. For the times that wasn't possible in scenarios of death, I have an empty space. In scenarios where it's no longer a situation that photo can be recreated, and for example, I have a photo of me and my childhood best friend. I can't recreate that photo as we live miles and miles apart now. But I was able to recreate the feeling of that with the family that I have created here in Athens, Ohio. And for the last part of my installation, I have a handmade book of a tarot journal here for people to be able to flip through and understand things slightly better, as well as a past, present, future reading that I believe depicts what I'm talking about here. A past, present, future reading, your first card being what is leaving your life, your second card being where you're at right now, and your last card being what is hopefully incoming. The past is the Four of Cups, which represents missed opportunities, whether by choice because you're not able to at the moment or because it simply does not suit you anymore. The present being the Death card, which in this space created you are surrounded by, meaning the ending of a cycle, something that can be grieved but must end, and the Fool, as silly as the Fool sounds, the Fool is about heading into your next journey blindly but full of faith in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey. Up next, we have Sarah.
Ready? Okay, I'm Sarah Heink. These 4 paintings on this wall are my thesis collection. They are figurative oil paintings that explore the crossroads between personal expression, identity, how one's identity is influenced by the different moments throughout their life, the communities to which they belong, and the places that they've lived. A lot of my work all of my work is created from taking a digital reference picture where I cast models using myself as well as people from my immediate community. And I create Photoshop mockups where I incorporate these images and other images that I've taken to create a scene. And then I manipulate further in Photoshop. I sketch it out. I do an oil painting underpainting using sepia tones so that I can land all the values. And then I use oil paint, which is a medium that has been used for centuries to preserve cultural narratives among people all over the world. And I like to capture these scenes with oil paint for these reasons, to preserve my own narrative and the way that I am experiencing human interactions throughout the world in my life. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I moved to Athens, Ohio, and both of these places have had profound impacts on my psyche and my sense of identity. And so I explore this in my art. Columbus is one of the fastest growing cities in America, whereas Athens is an area where I have gone since I was a young child to explore the natural serenity, and I have family in different parts of Southeast Ohio, and it's an area that has greatly influenced my work, and learning more about the history of this place has also definitely influenced my work a lot, contrasting to my upbringing in Columbus, which is really a booming, growing, bigger city. I like to explore different community dynamics within my art, and I encourage the viewer to place themselves in the scenes and consider their own place within the context of their communities, both socially and geographically. I think that it's important to consider these factors in our rapidly changing world, where there are a lot of factors such as the presence of technology and how fast it is infiltrating every aspect of our lives. And I urge the viewers to consider their own ways that they are adapting to these conditions and how their place and sense of community affects who they are as people. So my first painting is called All My Paintings Are Gone, Maintenance Cut Them Down, and it is kind of considering land and the places that you live in a psychogeographical sense, and also it kind of is a nod to considering the exploitation of women. And so I often consider my identity as a woman in my pieces and how that affects the way the world perceives me and the way that I perceive myself. This piece is called 22. It's about the urgency of leaving and beginning anew when you are a young adult, and cherishing the moments where you are meeting people and not knowing that the moments are potentially fleeting. So this is a portrait of not myself, but a member of my immediate community. And then this piece is called Going Down the Drain Again. This is another contemplative piece. It's a self-portrait. As you might be able to kind of tell, this red thread is beginning to connect all of my pieces. The title of my show, Red Thread, centers around red being a color of emotion, emotional intensity, and love, and also considering how the fabric of oneself and one's community is formed throughout these introspective works. My last piece, Please Leave Your Name and Number, is another exploration on kind of a psychogeographical standpoint, considering leaving and coming and going, and being at the crossroads of place and considering how relationships change in the digital age, and how people are growing accustomed to that. And so this body of work is just a culmination of my scholarship at Ohio University, and I'm very happy to be in a thesis show with all these wonderful artists. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Up next, we have the work of Sam. Hello, I'm Sam Buds. To start off, I'm going to read my artist statement. There is no love like a mother's, a statement often repeated throughout society when describing the impact of the bond between mother and child. This very love shapes us as a human race. From our mother's wombs we grow, nurtured, and upon our arrival on earth, it is by their nature we form our complete identity. They protect us when we are helpless infants and support us when we fly from the nest, but within them we will always have a home. A mother's love is to be unconditional and unwavering. But what happens when this bond is absent? What happens when a mother is not nurturing or present? Who are we to become? Love Sam explores the bonds of the maternal connection through different forms of familial relationships. The series confronts its audience with how one's relationship with their mother forms their identity, and how amidst the mother's absence, this relationship is salvaged in other forms. Through found family photos, painted portraits, and love letters, this body of work takes the audience on a journey through love and heartache, bringing them to the heart of who we are, an accumulation of those who surround us. So on the screen, I would like to share through our slides an up-close photo of this portrait and the letter that accompanies it. For starters, this portrait, I wanted to start with the beginning of my identity with my mother. We had a very tumultuous relationship. There were ups and there were a lot of downs. So for the background, I wanted to put a storm, and that storm represents, this beauty and grace with Mother Nature, but also this harm that it can do at the same time. And through the letter, I wanted to talk further about, though I have this rift between us and this disconnect, there's still love there. And I love her because to hate her is to hate me and to hate who I am, and I cannot do that. So I have to love her. I take you on this journey through the letter, but also through photographs, some that can be recognizable as portraits you may have taken with your own mother, birthday parties, things like that. For the next one, I want to share a close slide of this painting along with the letter. This one is Dear Aunt Pam. And my Aunt Pam was my first introduction to a more motherly bond and relationship. My aunt was the first person who allowed me to express freely my disconnect with my mother and made me feel seen and heard about how I felt. Though we did have some rocky times, not due to her own fault, but due to my pushing her away, she's always been there and loved me unconditionally and unwavering. And that was my first introduction of what a mother is supposed to treat you like and make you feel like. And so this letter is an appreciation to my aunt and also an apology, because through her I have often sought a surrogate mother, and when I did not get that complete satisfaction, I pushed her away in ways that I should not have. Up next, I want to share a slide of this portrait up close. I will let the camera make it play. This is Dear Ovita, and Ovita is my cousin, but she feels mostly like a sister to me, and she's my best friend. Growing up, Oliva often took me places with her. She made sure I always felt loved. I always had a place to stay with her. And she has continued supporting me in that type of relationship throughout till today. And so through her letter, I want to take this journey of like how her relationship, though more sisterly, she still mothered me in some ways. She offered me that support. She offered me that consistency, someone to always be around, and that was so important to me. Another very important thing about her to me is that she, through raising her own children now, is showing me a mother's love that way. And she's given me the opportunity to have my own relationship with her children and learn that on a different level. For the background, I chose a more floral pattern. I think for me, flowers show beauty and grace, strength, resilience, all things that she is. So that was why I chose this background. I'll share the next slide about my last portrait. This last piece is titled Dear Mavis, and Mavis is Alita's daughter, but she feels like a niece to me. Mavis is everything that I ever wanted to be as a child and as an adult. She's very strong-willed, opinionated, free, happy-go-lucky kid, at least when I'm with her. And so through her letter, I wanted to highlight how wonderful she is and something that maybe she can look back on later in life when she needs to remind herself of just how great of a human being she is, and also highlight how she's healed me and like my broken childhood. I think watching her grow up with a better support system through her mother has been very healing through my journey. And I want to highlight that and highlight the child, golden, carefree aesthetic of her. So this is my work. Thank you. Up next, we have Jenna Tucker.
Ready? All right, hello everyone. Thank you for watching, especially if you've made it this far into our live stream. My name is Jenna Tucker, and I'm a ceramics student as well as a student through the Honors Tutorial College. So my BFA thesis exhibition, Self-Service, has manifested itself both through this physical installation and through a brief research paper. So this has been a pretty time-consuming process, both creatively and theoretically. I wanted to just begin by reading my artist statement, which I actually wrote to sort of propose my thesis before I started on it. And I just found that it perfectly captures everything that I wanted to talk about in my piece. And I haven't created a piece of writing that speaks to that as much as this one. So I'm gonna share that with you right now. As a child, I had a small plastic kitchen. It sat at the top of the stairs in my childhood home, complete with miniature brightly colored dishes. Plastic food and drinks filled the tiny cabinets. On top of a nearby shelf sat a plastic tea set, delicately decorated with pink flowers. I fondly recall mornings and afternoons spent in that hallway pretending. I pretended, often with stuffed animals or dolls neatly arranged at my side, that I was a woman, a mother. I imagined I was standing in a real kitchen, making real lunch for real people. Of course it wasn't real. I was just a child, just pretending. Someday I'd become older and wiser, a real woman and a real mother. But not yet. Surely that would happen when I grew up. And until the day I became a real person, I could pretend in my plastic kitchen. However, now that I'm in my early 20s, I still feel like I'm pretending, just the same as I was then. So this exhibition sort of confronts the question of when does the pretending simply become just plainly existing? When do I stop mimicking a real capable woman and actually become one? Would I even know the difference? I wouldn't, because I'm beginning to think there isn't a difference at all. So this exhibition and the research that accompanies it sort of just dove into the double-edged sword of questioning one's identity. It can be very freeing to do that, but it can also feel very isolating, especially when you're questioning something like your gender identity, which is something that has been so drilled into what we know that it's almost second nature. So I was very inspired actually by Jenny Sworkin's book, Live Forum Women, Ceramics and Community, when I made this. And I thought about it a lot when I was thinking about how to approach this piece. So the materials that I ultimately chose were ceramic and the tufted yarn rugs. And ceramics and fabric alike were both considered feminine, crafty mediums. And when we look at what ceramics looks like today, that can be hard to believe. But in the past, ceramics was viewed strictly as a craft. It was not really well respected as an art form, and it was a part of a craft movement which was spearheaded almost exclusively by women. And then after World War II, with the passing of the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, which was an opportunity for those veterans to sort of reintegrate themselves into society, and they were provided with scholarships so that they could attend university. That is when men started to sort of come onto the craft scene, and ceramics in particular became associated with more masculine artists and as a masculine medium. So the choice of using ceramics and tufted yarn rugs was just sort of an homage to those women who spearheaded the movement and then were promptly pushed out of the picture once men started taking over. And that sort of reflects itself in the colors that I've chosen too. I think that too often in society there's a pattern where something has to be stripped of its feminine associations to be taken seriously. And this exhibition employs that over-the-top craftiness and pinkness, not just to make people realize how arbitrary those colors are in relation to gender, but also to show that pinkness and craftiness can be taken seriously as an art piece. So the process was long. I'll start with the ceramic pieces, and if you wanted to share the slides, I have some in-progress photos of my work, as well as on the second slide, the physical finished exhibition alongside my original sketches. So all of these tiers of the fountain were wheel thrown and altered off the wheel. That's typically how I like to approach my work. But this is sort of, in my mind, an upgraded version of the plastic kitchen that I discussed in my artist statement. And my goal here was to sort of make a piece that could portray how this is sort of an updated form of play that we're all practicing here. And gender is reiterated performatively. So this is a self-portrait of myself atop this fountain, this pouring vessel. It does not actually function as a fountain, but is representative of the emotional labor that comes with embodying the ideal woman. And it's filled with these tiny bottle caps, which look pretty small and insignificant, but were probably the most time-consuming part of this entire process and are also, I think, very indicative of the emotional labor that comes with being a woman, which is sometimes pretty repetitive. So each of these caps was created by press molding clay into a bottle cap, which was then dried, and the clay shrinks as it dries, so it was able to pop right out. And each of these were then brushed with wax by hand and hand dipped into glaze to eventually fill the fountain and be distributed amongst the cups around the table. And again, this is just very indicative of the labor that comes with embodying an ideal woman and the sacrifice that we're often expected to make as domestic homemakers and providers emotionally. And so the head was created by solid building out of clay. I built the head first, and you can probably see it in the pictures on the slides. I believe it's in the first slide. And eventually this was cut in half and hollowed out to create a form that was light enough to then add to this wheel thrown element. The cups were wheel thrown as well and altered off the wheel. And people always get pretty curious about the tufted rugs. Those were created using a tufting machine, which it almost looks like a gun that you hold in your hands. And there's a large frame covered in a burlap-like material, which can then be weaved through using the tufting gun to create these pieces. And these were then removed from the frame and altered as well. So there was a lot of fine-tuning, a lot of little touch-ups and sort of cosmetic adjustments to this work. And I think that that's also indicative of just what goes into being a woman and the work that we have to put in to naturally embody that perfect feminine standard. So this is a reflection of my own relationship with those ideals, but I hope that by portraying it, I can help other people who have maybe had a similar experience to realize that this shouldn't be internalized and is just a reflection of a system which is arbitrary and outdated. So thank you on behalf of our whole group for attending our gallery talk, and thanks for listening to my spiel.
Thank you all so much. That was wonderful. You did a great job. We are going to go over to Trissolini Gallery for the 5 o'clock gallery talks with the next group of artists from the exhibition called Bits and Pieces. So the Ohio University College of Fine Arts YouTube page, 5 o'clock. We will see you there. Thank you so much.